Okay. So it's not the same order, but never mind. If you want, you can, yeah. No, it's fine because we have the lutrin here. It's just for them to know. On n'a pas les visuels dans l'ordre des speakers, mais.
Okay, so the slides are not in the right order, but it's okay.
Textile finishing. The title is Textile Finishing, which game-changing techniques, and it's all in English this time. So maybe you can introduce yourself one after another. Harry?
Hi, I'm Harry. I'm from Alchemy Technology, based in Cambridge in the UK. I'm the product specialist. Nice to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chloé Bernard. I'm a textile engineer. I worked as product developer for 2 French brands, Decathlon and Aigle. And today I am specializing in industrial property at INPI.
Hi, yeah, my name is Juliette Jopit. So I work at Tectera, the innovation cluster for the French textile industry. Yeah, and I will tell you more later.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Thompson, and I'm the CEO of Colorized. We're a yarn coloration technology.
And hello, everyone. I am Marion Forêt. I work as a designer and a consultant, and I'm a teacher too. And actually, I'm working on a project for a company, a French company. The name is Les Teintures de France, and I'm building a new department about embroidery, mixing high technology and handicraft.
Thank you. Okay, so my first question is, what are the finishing techniques most commonly used in the fashion industry today, and what can we say about their impact on the environment? I don't know who wants to start.
I can give a very brief overview of what is happening in France today. So we have in France, a majority of non-continuous dyeing. That is important to say. So the main techniques for dyeing are continuous or discontinuous, if we just break this into 2 categories. And it's important to know that in France, 75% of the dyers right now in the French ecosystem are doing the non-continuous way. That is really, this context is really important to know in order to push the new technologies, because this is also a constraint in terms of investment that they have already done. And so this is not the most let's say, water efficient technique, but it's also very flexible compared to the continuous dyeing. It's also, that's why it's present in France, because we can have a lot of on-demand processes, on-demand fabrication. So we have to understand this as this is the situation today.
Thank you.
What I'll share is that I think for textile finishing right now is that the process is very segregated, that each step of the process really focuses kind of on their own knowledge. So if you think about yarn, you think about the coloration, you think about laundry, they all run as very separate pieces. And I think that maybe one of our biggest challenges within the industry is the lack of partnerships between all of them, because each piece really does affect the other. So if you're looking at laundering, you know, which is probably your most common finishing, if you can affect it upstream in the process, you can do much less laundering later on and really have some good impacts. So I think, you know, while the techniques are quite diverse in what's available out there, I think where the industry needs to focus is this idea of looking at the whole entire supply chain.
Okay, you said you answered the question for France, but is it the same abroad? No, you don't know.
it really depends on the variety, again, of the out product. There's a tremendous amount being done in fabric finishing, and I think the folks from Alchemy can speak to that. They do fabric. We do yarn, so there's yarn coloration that happens, both continuous and discontinuous, and there is a wide variety that's out there.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, according to the United Nations, dyeing is the second biggest cause of water pollution worldwide. Which techniques are particularly recommended, and what do you think needs to be improved in this area?
So yeah, I can talk about that a bit. That's what our company does. We're a purpose-driven business looking at dyeing and finishing of fabrics. So it was really born out of our CEO who visited dye houses in China. Saw the massive water and energy intensiveness of the industry, and we've developed a technology to apply dyes or finishes to textiles using a nozzle. So we can vary the quantity of dye or finish being applied to fabric and also control the penetration of that through the fabric. So it means using precision and controlling each individual nozzles means that we can really have massive savings on the wastewater problems that we see.
And for us, Colorized, what we do is we color yarn, and we also have really attacked the issue of water. So we're able to color yarn using less than 1 liter of water per 1 kilo of yarn. So if you compare that to normal discontinuous batch dyeing, you'd look at somewhere between probably 70 to 100 liters of water per kilo to color it. So this is it's a significant reduction. And we're doing it really through a radical new process in which we're actually using pigment and injecting that within the yarn structure. So there's a lot of great technology around that you can. Again, you don't need the high heat that you need in normal finishing. You don't need a lot of the chemistry. We actually reduce and eliminate bleaching and scouring completely with our yarn process. And it really opens up the sustainable factors there. So really looking at a whole new way of working.
Great.
Ursula De Castro, co-founder of the Fashion Revolution movement, say you can predict the next fashionable color by looking at the color of the rivers in China. I think that this shows that most dyeing in the world is highly polluting and highly chemicals, as well as using chemicals that are harmful to manufacturers and users. Dyeing uses far too much water and discharges huge quantities of chemicals into the rivers near the factories. We need to limit the use of chemicals and replace chemicals by dyes with natural ones. Today, many people are developing plant dyes, plant-based dyes, for example, based on algae or other plants. And I think it's a good idea, but there is still a lot of work to do in this area. And another innovation is dyeing with biosourced-based dyes, based on bacteria, for example. Companies like Spilly or Sinovens have been working on this for several years. And in the last year, several patents have been filed on new dyeing techniques using better dyes and/or less water and less energy.
Okay, do you want to react to this idea of developing new kind of dyeing but chemical? Because I know, for instance, that for Pili it's very, very complicated to reach the fashion markets for industrial problematics.
Yeah, actually we have identified a lot of these new techniques, new pigments, new natural colorants, but it's often now the matter of the infrastructure that are in place in the industrial sites. they have to adapt to these new techniques, and it's not that easy as an investment. So we have also identified the type of investment, or let's say processes that could enable the change of dyeing. For example, using enzymatic dyeing combined with ultrasonic could help those on maybe lower investment than changing radically to supercritical CO2 dyeing. Or like there is a huge range of techniques that are available. Not all of them are readily accessible for an SME in France or in Europe, actually. So it's important to pick the right chemistry, but also the right process. So it's a couple. It goes together, the process and the chemistry. You cannot develop the chemistry without the process that goes with it. And that's what we try to do at Tectara, is also foster collaboration between the manufacturers of machineries and the manufacturers of the chemistry. And both have to innovate together, actually. And so we see innovation with pigments, and pigments they can be sprayed, they can be used in a continuous dyeing way. But there need to be collaboration between machine manufacturers and the pigment distributor also, because there are so many in between. We've seen that there are so many people or companies between the pigment provider and then the end user, which is the SME, the dye house.
Yes, and I think that, as Chloe said, I think a lot of people doesn't think that natural dyeing is possible to be in the industry, but we see now that there are some companies developing natural dyes. There are Merdan, by example, and there are some new machines. There are one at the last ITMA in June. It's Natural DS.
Natural DS from Alliance Machine Textile.
Yeah, so very interesting, because you can. It's a special machine made for natural dyes, and so now you can control to have the same colors and with less water, because it's one of the problem too with natural dyes. You use a lot of water. So for the moment it's small scale, but it's possible. So I think we can believe in other techniques. Like, for me, bacterial is a very, very interesting way to imagine the future.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think the collaboration element to solving this issue is really important. I mean, for us, we've been inundated with brands and manufacturers just sending rolls and rolls and rolls of fabric to us and expecting us to have all the answers, but actually some buy-in from the industry and a bit of understanding that it takes time for new technologies to adapt. Yeah, it's a very good point.
And I would agree with the collaboration part. I think it's important for any new technology to find those partners. You know, in our world, we're definitely partnering with the chemistry providers. In essence, Colorized is a chemical delivery system. We happen to deliver color, but we can deliver bio-based colorants. We can use things like nature coatings, bio-based black through the system. We can use, you know, on the other side of it, we can use oxidized indigo and deliver that through the system. So we can really work kind of with the chemistry that's out there, and we're finding more and more partners that are coming up with new things, and they need delivery systems to get that chemistry to the textiles. So we can provide that, and then they can provide really great chemistry. And it's those collaborations, I think, that's going to really make huge impact.
Thank you. So now to enlarge a little bit to the other finishing, embroidery, printing, coating techniques, bleaching or finishing, which innovations do you see as particularly promising and why? We have already mentioned some of them, but maybe you want to talk about other promising technologies?
For embroidery, there is a technology that are very interesting that I am using actually, which the name is Coloril. It's in fact it's a thread dyeing unit that you can put on an embroidery machine. And so you use only one thread, which is a recycled polyester thread, white, and the thread passes through the dyeing unit, and it's dyed by sublimation. And so you dye only the colors you need and only the quantity you need. So you save a lot of water. You don't have to stock hundreds of different colors. And what is very interesting too, that you can make color gradations. So this is something very, very new and very interesting if you combine it with other techniques too.
Okay, interesting. We had them as an exhibitor on previous edition, and it's pretty impressive. And do you know if it's as much long-lasting as any other technique for?
You mean the
color?
Coloration is at the moment. You draw your embroidery on a software, and you choose the color where you want, and then you start the embroidery, and the coloration is on the moment when you embroidery. It's at the same time. Yes, because it's sublimation, so it's a special dyes made for synthetic fibers. So as it's polyester, it's very well fixed. But you can on the other hand, you have only one thread. It's a recycled polyester. This thickness, that's it.
Doesn't work with cotton or?
No, it's sublimation, so only for polyester. This is the other. But
do you want to talk about specific innovation that you would have in mind for other finishing, or?
I think it's important to reduce the amount of water using in finishing, and the Daiku company has found a solution with carbon dioxide-based dyeing that use no water at all. But it seems to me that it only works on synthetic fabrics and not on natural ones.
Yeah, actually, on this aspect, the supercritical CO2, it's very promising. But however, it requires a very high pressure on the machine. Requires very high pressure, relatively high temperature. So again, we have to see the overall impact of this technology, because it's good at big scale, but it's not everyone can invest in that technology. And as I understand right now, it needs to be also developed on more diverse composition. So it's already used in Asia on sport brands. Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about? I heard about foam dyeing, which sounds very interesting. And so, what do you think about this?
Actually, this is promising, but it's also from the point of view of like the European SMEs, because foam dyeing, for instance, is quite interesting because it reduces the amount of water. I think it's at least by 50% in terms of water, and it's a semi-dry process, because you only produce the foam and then you apply it either with pressure or without pressure. You apply it on the textile, and so you reduce the amount of steps, and it doesn't require a high investment also. So it's quite promising for the European landscape. I think it's an interesting innovation. So yeah.
Thank you. My fourth question is, some old techniques are relevant from an ecological point of view, but have been neglected because of yield issues. Is it in the interest of manufacturers to help safeguard the craft industry, and how?
Yeah, I think that we are seeing a shift. Actually, there is a new way to a new look at handicraft, especially for sustainability, for low fashion, and I think that the textile industry should find solution to preserve some know-how for the beauty in fashion, and not only for the beauty, but also for the future of the professional, to make the fashion, more desirable. And as we said, there are a lot of techniques like natural dyes that we can think about those techniques to invent new things. It can be an inspiration. By example, there are a lot of ideas maybe for patterns. And by example, there is the printing with mordant, which come from the Indian prints, what we call the Indian patterns. So you print with mordant and then you dye the fabric. So it's another way to make some prints, some designs. Or we can be inspired by all those techniques which are resist dyeing. You can use rice paste. It's from the katazome. It's a Japanese technique. Or vegetable wax from the batik. Or ligature from the ikat. And maybe if we mix those techniques with low waterless dyeing, maybe we can find a way to have something to save some handicraft and find new ways to have another sensitivity in fashion. And that's why in the embroidery department that I am actually working on, I am really trying to adapt by mixing high-tech technology like Coloril, and I have been able to have a very old technology of embroidery which is the Corneli, which is fashionable actually, but big fashion brands ask for Corneli, but they don't know what it is. It's an old machine. We call it unguided embroidery machine. And in France, by example, there is only one training, only one school who still teach this technique. There is not a lot of machine, and so it's a know-how that only a few people know. So for me, it's very interesting to mix the machine with this technique, because the machine will help for the cost efficiency of slow techniques, and the slow techniques will give more sensitivity to the machine techniques. So that's what.
Yes. I think on the idea of the craft side of things, I think it's important from an inspiration standpoint to really support that. But I think if we truly want to have impact, it's got to be at scale. We have 8 billion people on this planet to provide clothing for. I always say the most sustainable thing would be if we forego wearing clothes, but since that's not an option, we're going to have to clothe them. And with 8 billion people, the craft industry is fabulous. They do great things. We can be inspired. We can take things, our learnings from there and bring it into industry, but we need to be able to do it at scale to save this planet, to be really quite frank. As you said, we as an industry contribute over 20% of the world's industrial wastewater pollution. We contribute more CO2 emissions than all transportation combined. That's huge, and to have that impact, we're going to have to be at scale and in large production quantities, because we're projected to grow our population to almost 9 billion by 2050. Again, they're all going to need to wear clothes.
Yes, Harry, you want to add something?
I was just going to say, in terms of pre-existing equipment that may be in factories, one of the things for us to focus on is ensuring that our systems are modular, so we can replace elements of the supply chain that are the most polluting, rather than just coming in and then having millions of pounds worth of equipment just sat to one side. That's not in the essence of sustainability. So yeah, it's definitely important to have that sort of modularity in manufacturing.
Okay, so my last question is, what would need to change to give new processes the opportunity to enter value chains more quickly to limit damages? Of course, nowadays we have most of the fabrics are dyed with the techniques that you were mentioning before that are causing a lot of damages, and if we have to adapt all the machines, it will pose economic questions and issues as well. So what do you think about it? How could we help new techniques to spread the word more quickly?
One thing is for sure data. There is really no data or very limited data of the performances of the processes, and factory managers have very low. It's not that they don't know their processes, they know really well their processes, but it's often very empirical and not often data-driven. And we've seen that by knowing how processes work and how parameters influence the end result, you can really influence the efficiency of the whole process, even reducing the energy consumption, the water consumption. So really helping this industry to move faster on data and on data capture. And we know that other industries have done this before, so it's important that the textile manufacturers also start collecting data and making sense of their data. And that will help for many things, for life cycle assessment. It will help for process optimization. So it's there are a lot to do with data.
What we're seeing most success in is really partnering with brands and retailers. So really end product buyers and getting their buy-in on new technology, and then them coming back into the supply chain and encouraging the adoption of new technologies. There's no manufacturer out there who wants to take a risk on a new technology if they don't believe they can sell the product that comes off of it. And I think that model needs to be expanded much more, and the brands need to step up and make some commitments to these companies who are putting in the new technologies, because everyone talks about wanting it, but the implementation is slow, and there are great technologies out there that can at scale make impact, but there has to be purchasers of that product.
At INPI, with the geographical indication approvals, we are helping to safeguard the craft industry by protecting the know-how of certain French regions so that there can be no counterfeiting. For example, at the end of January, a new geographical indication was approved, the Calais Caudry lace. It was lace made in the north of France, and we are very happy to be able to help this craft alive.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so happy to hear that. Because for me there is a problem in the brands, because they don't really know heard about innovation and knowing too the know-how like Dentelle de Calais, because in the school, actually, especially in France, we don't teach in-house about the textile, how textiles are made. So actually, I'm facing some brands asking crazy things because they ask me, by example, to do an embroidery, and sending me a jacquard label. They think it's an embroidery, so it's difficult. And by example, for lace, for me it's a big issue because if we don't teach to the student why the French lace is very expensive because it's made. It's old machinery. You need many years to be able to use those machinery. It's not some jobs that are very sexy for young people. And if you don't teach them why it's very important to save and why it's very expensive, when they will be still fashion stylists, they won't understand why this lace regarding another lace, knitted lace, there is a gap of the price. So I think at schools there is an issue to the young generation. They really want to do sustainability fashion, but they don't have access to the innovations and most of the time they say, okay, I will do a cotton brand with fabrics I will find in the Sentier area in Paris, and that's it. And the access is very limited.
I want to add one thing. I think what you're doing today is really valuable, is focusing on finishing. I think the industry has focused primarily on material, and that's important. We know preferred materials and that type of thing. But if you look at the LCA of a garment, the majority of impact is on finishing. To put those numbers in perspective, your material is about 10% of your total LCA from a carbon footprint standpoint, where your finishing is between about 35 and 45%. And until we shift the conversation more to finishing, we're not going to have that impact. Because even if you take the most preferred fibers, you look at the best application, regenerative grown cotton with no irrigation, all of this, you might move the numbers, by 1 or 2%. If you clean up finishing, you can move those numbers by 30–40%, which is huge. And so if we don't start having this conversation, we're never going to get there from an impact standpoint.
Totally agree, and it's so unfair that we are not talking more about it, because I guess it's also because this pollution is not visible in developed countries. I mean, in France, for instance, you know better than I do, but most of the the products on the market are not dyed in France. So it's something that we are not thinking about, because it's not that visible, not as much as the waste we were mentioning before that we all have in our wardrobes, right?
Yes. And there's a huge lobby on the fiber side of things. There's groups out there who promote fiber. There's no one out there promoting finishing or promoting saving water or promoting lack of pollution in our streams, sadly, because there's no consumption. There's no money to be made, for them to save these things, where there's money to be saved or to be made when you're promoting a new material. So it really makes it hard to have the conversation.
Maybe you can join forces to create one.
I think we need it. It's a good call.
It was also important for me to welcome you because you are working at INPI. Maybe you don't know what is INPI, some of you. It's the organization in France which is registering all the patents and new brands. And so I think in your position, it's an ideal position to identify the trends in terms of innovation. So would you say that there is something coming in the industry regarding this water pollution we were mentioning, or this kind of issue, and regarding the finishing techniques? Is there something coming, or?
Yes, in 2023, there were more patents filed about new dyeing techniques or new dyes, and it's on this point that there is a movement.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, you want to add something now?
I was just going back to Jennifer's point earlier about buy-in from the brands. I think for us, that was one thing. We've changed business model and now work directly with brands to prove out the solution for them to meet their requirements, provide LCA data, performance data that can be shared across the marketing, because that's what brands want at the end of the day, and then prove out the scalability to their own supply chains.
Maybe we have questions in the audience for our speakers. Yes, please. Yeah, can we have the micro, please?
This is for Jennifer. You talked about bio-based dye solutions. Does that work for white as well?
Are you like a bleach white?
Optic white?
So that's a great question, and I would say for our technology, we don't focus on white because we do we start with an unbleached product. So I think there's some options out there that are, I don't know if bio-based is the right word for it, but maybe more like the ozone type dyeing and things like that use a lot less water that you can still bleach with, but it's not a group of technology that we utilize within my chain of things. So I don't know that I'm the expert to speak on that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi, my question is there a does the current dye agents take into consideration of the recycled raw materials? Because we own and manufacture yarn and we run a dye factory for 30 years, and we see the current recycled raw material really affect the finish and the color. And like the lady just mentioned, like we want to use less water, but in the end we actually use more because many times we have to re-dye it, we have to fix it, we have to tweak with the formula because the old formula doesn't work on the recycled materials right now. And we actually went to the manufacturer side of the raw materials. They have no standards because how can you differentiate one batch of water bottles from the other? Every water bottle is different. So that in turn, like I fully agree with what you said with the segregation, because when we dye it and we spin it and roll it, then every batch is slightly different, and in the end, we are actually wasting materials or wasting energies and waters, but there's not much we can do on our side. We actually put out our 110%, but we're not seeing the better outcome out of it. But people was telling stories and trying to make a better world. But how can we fix it from your standpoint?
I would love to take this. So I think one of the interesting things that we've found is in my world, we color with pigment. And this is a different idea than coloring with dye. Okay, when you color with dye, you have to have an open dye site. And this is what you're dealing with, is you're lacking an open dye site, or you're starting with a miscoloration within the fiber or the yarn. And when you work with pigment, and I really do believe the future of the textile industry is in the pigment side of things, because I don't need that open dye site. If you look at it from a really simple thought process, my technical team hates when I say this, but I'm painting color on fiber. So I'm not actually creating that chemical reaction. So I can take that miscolored yarn that you're talking about, and I don't care what color it starts with. I can actually do it on post-consumer waste. That's a blend of fibers. The contaminations don't matter. You know, normally if you're trying to do post-consumer and it's cotton and there's just that touch of polyester in, that's a disaster from a dyeing standpoint. I can coat over all of that and bring it to a uniform color. And if you're off a few shades from a blend standpoint, it's okay. I can use that technology to bring it back within standard. So this is what I'm saying. Sometimes you have to think through the process and kind of go radical with it, because you're right. If you're doing it the traditional way, you're going to have to bleach it. That bleaching further damages the fibers that are there. They often aren't even throughout, you know, the distribution's not even, so you're having darker spots, lighter spots, where if you take a totally new approach to it, you're able to put that pigment onto the yarn and get a really beautiful color fast and color consistent product.
Thank you. Anyone else on this very interesting and useful question? No? Do we have another question? Okay, so thank you so much. Would you like to say something to conclude? Any of you?
Finishing matters.
Finishing matters. So we already have the slogan.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.